Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
8:06. It's our fourth hour of 4 hours every morning starting at 5 a.m. If you missed anything up until now, go ahead and subscribe and download our podcast. Speaking of podcasts, Bethany Mandel, you should really look into doing a podcast. That would be a great idea for you.
I should. It's called The Mom Wars. Thanks for listening, Larry O'Connor. It is available anywhere you get your podcast, and if you want to hear all things mom and wars, The Mom Wars is the place for you.
The Mom Wars. That sounds like, I mean, it could get violent. It could get really ugly.
I mean, my co-host is British, and so we really rehash.
I want a front row seat to the Mom Wars. Coming up in 30 minutes, Sean Spicer will join us. He knows a thing or two about politics. In fact, he's forgotten more about politics than most people will ever know in this town. We like tapping into his genius. So Sean Spicer coming up in 30 minutes. Right now, KT McFarland joins us, forgotten more about foreign policy and national security than most people in this town. We have smart guests, Bethany.
Thank God they have to make up for the hosts.
I was going to say it myself. Don't put yourself in that. The secret to doing a good talk radio show is to surround yourself by people who are smarter than you.
There we go.
KT McFarland leads that list as she joins us now. KT, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
So Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is spending a week in Washington, D.C. with an incredible security footprint, by the way. Now listen, he needs the security, but good Lord, it was tough to get around wherever Bibi was this week. And lots of high-level conversations. In fact, one pretty infamous meeting, one-on-one with the president, third one in a day, I think, where the prime minister called for it himself. What are you hearing here in terms of the next step for a lasting peace in the Middle East?
Well, one thing that President Trump does not want to do is send ground forces anywhere. So whatever the next step is of securing Gaza, and it's really the issue is the day after. I don't think they're that upset or concerned with what happens in the next 60 days. I think they do feel that they've got a ceasefire in the works, a prisoner exchange, but then what happens the day after all that? Does Israel stay in Gaza? Does Hamas leave Gaza? Does somebody else come in and guarantee the peace in Gaza? Because the one thing you know is you can't just walk away because Gaza will be reconstituted by Hamas, so you'll have the same old problem all over again. So that will be the biggest topic of conversation. One thing that I'm hearing from my friends in the administration is that they very much want to have it be a Middle East solution. So in other words, it shouldn't be the United States imposes a solution, but the Arab countries in the region, particularly the wealthy Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, they would provide whatever they would shoulder whatever the costs are, and that they would participate in whatever the peacekeeping force was.
So there's been a lot of sort of back and forth conversation from the last time, actually, Benjamin Netanyahu was in town, about this plan to relocate a lot of Palestinians out of Gaza. We didn't hear about it for a long time, and a lot of smart people thought that, maybe that was just sort of hubris. But now we're hearing it again in the last few days. What do you think the likelihood of it is of that plan of, relocating millions of Palestinians out of that territory?
Well, here's the problem with it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because 97% of Gaza is in rubble and 99% of Palestinians are unemployed. So why build on the rubble? You're just going to have the same problem. The biggest issue, though, is although the Arab neighbors, and including in that the Egyptians, they don't want the Palestinians. Yeah. So they've said, it's a great idea, but we don't want them in our country because they're just going to import revolution and problems into our own countries. I think when President Trump said, let's redevelop it into the Riviera, the Gaza Riviera, funny. But he had a point, which is you need to find a way for these people to get jobs, great jobs in the hospitality industry, great jobs in a construction industry. But you got to make sure that Hamas is not somehow in that. And I think it was also President Trump saying to the other countries in the region, okay, you guys, if you don't like my idea, come up with something else.
Right.
And that's where they are.
So I'm personally not super interested in a vacation in Khan Yunis, but, maybe others feel differently. But I think that there is a possibility of President Trump sort of putting pressure on countries that, needs something from us. For example, lowering the tariffs. Like, do you think that that's how America is going to get involved in this relocation plan, sort of putting the pressure on third-party countries to say it's time for you to step up and take some of these Palestinians from Gaza?
Well, and also remember, we give a lot of aid to those countries.
Yeah.
We give Jordan a lot of aid. We give Egypt a lot of aid. And what are we getting for it? So, again, President Trump uses the commercial leverage that we have, trade, economics, as you point out, the tariffs, to get something for it. And what we get for it is maybe in some cases helping the United States economy, but in other cases probably helping what's going on in the Middle East. Yeah, I think he will absolutely use especially the aid to Egypt and to Jordan and to the other countries in the region who might want American aid, like Syria and others. One of the selling points that the Saudis used with the new Syrian leadership, the guys who used to be terrorists but we're hoping are now going to be responsible citizens and responsible leaders of their own countries, is, hey, look, what happened with Egypt, what happened with Jordan? They were at war with Israel, they made peace with Israel, and now look, they're friends of the United States, they get a lot of aid from the United States. So maybe Syria, you should follow that same direction. So all of those things, Trump is not going to be the first guy to put more boots on the ground. He's the first guy who's going to lean on the economic and the commercial relationships we have.
KT, swinging over to Russia, the president dropped a barnyard epithet this week describing what he's been getting from Vladimir Putin. Starts with a B and ends with a T, multisyllabic. What do you make of the current state of affairs here, as the president also said that it looks like they're going to have to rearm the Ukrainians, so no peace in our time, it appears?
Think of how this has evolved in the last 4 months. 4 months ago, President Trump had the Ukrainian leader in the Oval Office, and that was that huge blow-up with Zelensky, right? Because Zelensky said, well, we're not going to agree to anything unless you provide basically NATO security guarantee for Ukraine. Now, that's all changed. We now have an economic relationship with Ukraine with the rare earth minerals deal. President Zelensky has understood that, let President Trump come to his own conclusions about the Russians, and I think that's where we are now. And even though Putin was stringing Trump along saying, oh, no, we're going to be good, we want to negotiate, we want to end this war, it's now pretty clear that Putin wants to go in his own direction. I would not want to face a Donald Trump who feels he's been played. Remember, I'm a New Yorker, and I can tell you there is nobody more than a New Yorker, and especially a New Yorker from Queens, who gets mad if he's been exploited and taken advantage of and strung along. And then add to that the construction industry, which Donald Trump comes from. I think he's rip-roaring mad that he's given Putin every opportunity to have a good relationship with the United States and to have this resolved peacefully. And if Putin isn't going to be there, I think Donald Trump will all of a sudden decide, we will arm Ukraine, we will help Ukraine. Again, no American boots on anybody's ground, but I think he'll support President Zelensky, and I also think he'll, again, use the economic weapon now against Putin.
By the way, Zelensky met with the Pope, said that he's hoping that the Vatican, in the personage of Pope Leo, might be able to broker a deal or at least facilitate a conversation. Do you see any end in sight here? Is that the solution, perhaps?
That the Pope is going to get everybody to agree? Yeah. I think that, well, look, Donald Trump is the deal maker in the world right now, and it'll be up to Donald Trump to figure out how to thread this needle. But the one weapon Trump has left, which he has been reluctant to use, is this huge weapon of secondary sanctions against Russia. We don't trade with Russia, so that's not going to. American sanctions don't make a difference. But we could make pretty sure that Russia isn't allowed to sell its oil or natural gas to other countries in the world, and that effectively bankrupts Russia overnight.
All right, we'll leave it there. KT, always a great conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.